Okay, friends, we are at my work desk and I am ready to jump into this project right now. So I want to start with some really basic and easy lover's eyes, and I'm going to show you the things that are critical for this project, in my opinion. Now, I'm sure there are different ways of doing it, but I did make a bunch off camera. Which is not my usual thing. Usually I jump right in on camera. I'm not afraid to make mistakes. I take you with me and we learn together. But in this particular case, I knew there would be a learning curve on some things, and I wanted to make sure that I made this as easy and clear as possible. So I've already figured out a little bit of a process for this. And here are the things that I think at a minimum you need. There's two kinds of glues I'm using. I'm going to be using a Beacon 3-in-1 glue, which is a permanent adhesive. And this is the most important thing. This is the only thing I think you truly have to buy for this project, and that is Mod Podge Dimensional Magic. Now, there probably is other things you can use. Maybe you can use resin. If there's something else you know that would work in this project, please put it in the comments below. But this is what I have found I have always had excellent luck with, and it works fabulous. And a 2-ounce bottle will last you a very long time if you take care of it. So this is probably the number one thing. Then what I found is helpful is a really small pair of scissors with a very sharp point. A pair of tweezers can be very helpful. A pokey tool is a necessity, but you could use a toothpick. You don't need an actual pokey tool. Something to spread with. So I'm using a paintbrush, but a really cheap one, like the kind that you wouldn't mind throwing away after if it gets gunked up with glue. I made the mistake of using a decent one, and now I'm regretting it. So I'm using one of these cheapos that probably come in a kit, like a craft kit that they supply with you, with it, a throwaway, a little popsicle stick, and, other little metal utensils. Really, the only reason those are important is because you're going to be moving some things around in the glue, and you want to be able to have a little bit of control. So, and then, of course, you need a stack of eyes. And I have created a kit, which will be online by the time this video appears. And you can go to my Etsy shop if you'd like to purchase that. It's not that I want to require you to buy something from me. It's for me, when I do a project, the curating part takes a lot of time. And I can tell you that I have, over the last 6 months, been curating different paintings from, the 1700s, 1600s, 1800s, and I have been curating them for eyes and then cutting out the eyes and trying the eyes. And this is my best stack of eyes so far. So when you go, I have a materials kit that will be an eyes kit that's up there. I will put the name of it right here because at the time of taping, I'm not finished the kit yet and I don't know what it'll be called. So I'm going to put that here because I can do that when the kit's available. And then you just want to cut them out or even leave them on the sheet. That's fine. And you just want to have them handy. And so now you have your paper eyes. Now you don't need to buy from me. Like I said, you can get eyes from magazines. You could get eyes from art books. If you go to a thrift shop or have a collection of art books, you can cut them out, like get a book of like a master or something, like a Renoir book, or not a Monet. You don't want impressionists, you want really realistic. So I would say the Renaissance is a really great time period. Michelangelo, Rococo type style, that would be like a really awesome style of eye to cut out. But you can cut them out from books and magazines, is what I'm saying. And the last thing is elements that you're going to make into your lover's eyes. So just to repeat, you need glue, a few tools, you need your embellishment pieces, and you need some paper eyes. That's it. That's your 4 things. Now the 5th thing, which is optional and which I think makes a difference, is glitter or tiny jewels. I happen to have a lot of glitter down in my craft room because I enjoy making little teeny tiny fairy bottles and mermaid bottles, and I put lots of interesting glitters in them. So I have a lot of interesting glitters at my disposal, and I want to show you the ones that I think are most effective. So I really like using mica flakes and gold leaf. These are from Prima Marketing, Finnabar, and I've had these forever. This is granite, this is gold leaf, and this is mica. They're the gift that keeps on giving. You do not need much of this to go a long way. I think I've had these bottles for 6 years. I use them, and look how much is still left. So if you're investing in a little bit, if you want to invest in this project, these will also be used on lots of other projects as well. These I bought at Michael's years ago, and they got teeny tiny little balls in them. I wish I had bought silver. I regret not buying silver. I don't know if they still sell them. They sold them in the fancy glitter section, and like I said, I've had them a long time, and I've not regretted having them. And then, of course, some fine glitters are good, like a nice, very fine, sparkly glitter is good. And then I have these little tiny seed beads. Look, I got them for $1.50. They are called, they literally called them beads. And they're super small, and I like to use them like tears in eyes. So we just added something else to your list of supplies. Embellishments, glue, tools, paper eyes, and glitter. So now let's get started. Let's start with the most basic of the basic, and that would be a bezel with a glass piece. So these are sold everywhere on Amazon. And I know I just told you you don't have to buy anything, but I'm just showing you some of the materials I'm using from my stash. And they sell them on Amazon, they sell them in stores, and basically the glass piece goes in the bezel. And I can tell that this one actually doesn't go to that one because it's too big. I have a stash of bezels and cabochons all the time because when you watch me do this, you're going to see how easy this is, and you're going to say, I want to do that with a bunch of other things. So here you can see it's just a 2-piece set, a metal bezel. They come in all different color metals, and then this little glass cabochon that sits on the top. So then the key is to then start looking for eyes that you like underneath that piece of glass. I'm going to zoom you in. The key is, though, that the glass does somewhat magnify it, just a hair. So you have to really make sure it's an eye you like. I like that, and I like if I put it a little offside, I get a little bit of a hairline. So that one's a possibility. And you're just going to go through and see if you can find an eye that you like. I don't like my eyes to be filling the entire space. I feel like it's just too much. I want to have some room around the eyes. So I have sized eyes, all different sizes for all different types of bezels. So there's some small ones. And that's more of a darker eye. This is a very hooded eye. And they say the hooded eye kind of shows a very romantic gaze. I like that. And to me, it's a little bit mysterious and slightly like I'm watching you. Like they all have a different look, right? I like that one. Is the easiest way that I have found to cut these out is to literally hold the bezel or the cabochon or the item you're going to put it inside against the eye and cut around it. The reason being, if you cut it out ahead of time and it's too big, then you have to keep futzing and putting it inside the thing and then taking it out and taking off a little bit more, and it just becomes a little monotonous. So, and it doesn't have to be perfectly round, as you can see. Like I did it like a lousy job with that. But that's okay, because what's going to happen now is I'm going to just place it in here and put the cabochon on, and you're going to see, you don't see any of the lousiness. You really don't. So this is how easy it is. Are you ready? I'm going to zoom in so you can see. You literally take a little bit of this dimensional magic and you put it in the bezel. You can spread it around if you want, but you don't even need to do that, because then once you put it on the paper, you can just move it around like that. Don't put too much, because you don't want it to bleed through the front. And then you just put a dot here on the cabochon, and you press it down and you work out any of the bubbles. Crazy, right? That is how literally easy it is, okay? I'm going to take some of these things off because I want to make a little bit of a mess. I'm going to make a little bit of a mess. What's interesting is this cabochon's been hanging around my work table for a couple days. I don't know if you can tell. Do you see that little glitter, or a little bit of glitter that you see? It must have rolled up against glitter on the back, and it's slightly got a glittered glaze. Happy accident. I did not plan that, and I like it. All right, so now I'm going to do something a little nutty. This is worth its weight in gold, this little glitter pan. You do not need one. You can use a takeout pan, which is what I'd been using for a week. And when I say a takeout pan, I mean, like, you know, when you take food out and you get this like plastic thing after. But it's big, cumbersome, and I can't pour it back in the bottom well. So this is just a little glitter pan. They use it for jewelry too. And I'm going to take my gold beaded glitter, and this is where it gets fun. I'm going to take the 3-in-1 glue, because it's not as viscous, it's not as thin, and I can control it. And I'm going to make a bead of a little bit of glue around this lover's eye. And then the other reason I did some of these off camera is I'm looking through the camera doing a craft. I am not going to be as accurate or as neat doing it that way. And basically I want my lover's eyes pretty neat. So I am doing these on camera. They will not be as accurate as the ones I make not off camera. All right, so I've made this like bead of glue around, and now I'm going to pour this on top of it. How cool is that, right? So now, because Beacon does take a little while to dry, I have the opportunity to go in with this pushing tool, aka a like wooden, nothing special, right? A wooden, you can use a toothpick, tongue depressor, popsicle stick, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just going to be pushing these like little tiny balls away from the center. And what I can do is take acetone later and clean up that glass. Now on the edge, I can decide if it's neat enough, and I can just take my fingernail. And this is why I can't keep a manicure, because Beacon Glue has like acetone in it. And I work with my fingernails on this project, and then I ruin my nails. Not that I ever have professional manicures. Very rarely even have fingernails. And then you can kind of let that dry. And then if you want to add a little bit more glue, I can keep adding some of those gold little pearly things. I don't know what I want to call them. Beads, glitter. And you could use regular glitter for this, right? I'm going to put this aside while it's drying. And let's do another one. Now this one is about as easy as they come. It's just a wooden bezel. I got them on Amazon for a class I was teaching at the art center, and I have some left over. And then this is from one of the kits, and I just cut that out, and it fits in perfect. Now I'm just going to stick it in with a little bit of that dimensional magic. But then I have to decide if I like it as is, right? I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to show you the second step on this. I kind of do just like it as it is. Some of them are very simple, and man, that couldn't be any easier. It's not done, but it's half done. So now we'll put that one aside. So here's a little something I found at the jewelry section of the craft store, and it's broken. There was another piece right here, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to glue it. And I don't think I really need much in it, but so here's the eye I chose. I like this eye. I think that the darkness of the skin and of the eye when it's under here really just looks good. But then you have this really ugly back part. Now, I'm not going to get too creepy on you, but I'm going to share a little something about this jewelry. Lover's eyes often were used as mourning jewelry. Not mourning as in when you wake up in the day, but mourning as in you just lost someone you loved. And quite often, the Victorians would cut a lock of hair from somebody that just passed, and they would put it on the back side of the locket. So there would be like this little compartment back here, you can kind of see, and they would put the little lock of hair with a ribbon, which is kind of sweet and kind of creepy. Or they would really, the Victorians were amazing, they would actually weave the hair, and you would think it was like a piece of linen or some kind of a woven piece, but really it was hair that was woven. If I get a chance, I will insert a picture here so you can see what that would look like. I'd like the idea of it, but I'm not cutting my hair, and I think it's creepy to put my hair in a project. So I'm not going to do that, but I do want to kind of build off of that. So I think it would be really cool to put something woven or some kind of textile in the back that would give it texture and interest. So I'm going to go look in my textiles, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have an idea. So one of the things I really love about creating something that's inspired by the past is that we have the opportunity to tell our own stories through these items. So I want to tell the story of this lovely lady, and I don't know her. But what I'd like to do is, because mourning jewelry a lot of times was about salvaging something that the person, from that person, I'm going to pretend in my story that I'm creating that she made this handmade lace. And or maybe this handmade lace was on a dress that she used to wear all the time. And I want this handmade lace to be a part of this project. So what I'm thinking about doing is I will put her eye on this black paper. I am going to glue on the back this piece of lace. So I'm going to tack that lace right down like that. And the black really makes the lace pop. And then I'm going to put my finger right here, and I'm going to say that's the center of the eye, like that. Okay. So now, just to be sure, I'm going to cut out this piece, the center of this lace, and then I'll see how it looks in this like locket piece. And again, it's about telling a story. It's about being inspired by history and making journals something really special and cool. And it's sometimes the inspiration for the whole thing. So if her eye is here, it's going to be hard because I'm going to do it upside down. All right, so I'm going to have to trim right around that eye really close and hope that I did a good job. Let's place this here, and then close it. And how cool is that? But it's too big. I can't have it on this metal piece because it's thick enough, it's keeping it from closing. So when it was just the eyeball, it wasn't bad. It was fine. But now that I've added a thin coat of another layer of paper, and now I have a textile, my locket's like, no, thank you. I don't think I want to close for you. So now I'm going to have to do that annoying trim thing I told you about, which is trim, check, trim, check, trim, check. And that seems to work. That's pretty good. Okay, so now one of the things that I want to tell you is I'm handling this item a lot. I'm getting fingerprints all in it. And I don't want fingerprints in it when I create it. So what I'll do is take a little Q-tip with some acetone on it, and I'm going to wipe the inside and outside of that glass so that when I glue it, it looks like perfection. You could probably also use alcohol, rubbing alcohol to do this. I like acetone only because it'll take off anything that I don't want on there, and it dries super fast. So I'm going to take a bead of the 3-in-1 glue, and I'm just going to dot it around. I don't want to do too much because if it squirts on the inside, then I'm going to see that. Just enough to tack that. I'm going to even spread it a little bit with my hand because my finger, I just don't want it leaking inside. And I'm actually going to take that acetone and make sure that I have no glue there. And now I'm going to center the lace there and make sure I can close this a little bit more this way. And that's good. I'm going to check this side. That looks good. So here we go, right? We have the eye on one side in this cool jewel. And then we have the piece of lace on the other side, right? Which makes for a really cool embellishment, I think, and a storytelling piece, right? Like this could be put in a little velvet box or on a piece of velvet ribbon. And you could name her and name the journal and come up with an entire story based just on that, right? And really, how cool would this look hanging somewhere and people are like, what the heck is that? Okay, so that's one. Let's go back to this cabochon here. Now is the time, since it's dry, to then go in and see if you want to do any more of these. I really like the thin. I like seeing the metal. I think I'm going to keep it as it is. I do feel like there could be a little bit of additional pieces put on the front here. So now I'm going to go in with my Dimensional Magic, and I'm just going to touch, because it is so viscous, right? You can see how much this one is just so liquidy. I'm just going to touch some of this top area. One, to keep these little balls in place and more permanent. This dries clear. And also to add a few. And again, this is where I can take my paintbrush, just push any that I don't want away, tap them in. See how I can tap them in? And again, you can do this with glitter. And then that one will be pretty much done. And this is where this tray is really handy. It has a little cap here that you unscrew. And then voila. You don't waste, and that's how you keep it for a long time. Okay, so now this will be number 2 that will be drying. Number 2. So here's just a die cut piece of paper, right? This is a die cut, Tim Holtz die cut that I made into I put a little gilding wax on and made into a book plate, right? So this is where we get like the most basic of basic, right? You can just put an eye on there and cut it out. So it's really about trying to find an eye that speaks to you and wants to tell you a story, or emotes the I feel like this is a very curious eye, like a mysterious eye. So it's really about, what do you want the eye to say? Do you want the eye to look loving? Do you want the eye to look piercing? Right? That's an interesting one. Not sure what that's communicating. See, I feel like that eye is too big. I like it when the eye is smaller. It gives more of an expression in my mind. Ooh, I like that one. I like that one because I like this little bit of negative space here. I like that she's peeking through. I like her skin tone with the gold. That's my winner for me. So again, this is about as easy as this gets. You could crank out a gazillion of these with some die cut frames or some really cheapy frames. And it's really just about gluing it on the back, right? Now, if I was going to see the back, I'd want to put some pretty paper on there and then trim that out. But this is probably going to go on a journal cover or a signature cover, and no one's ever going to see that. So I'm just going to put glue stick right around there. Stick this on, and then adjust it from the front. I feel like she's a little crooked. Okay, that's better. Right? Just about as easy as it can get, and she would look fabulous, like on a book, right? Like on a book. So very basic. And you know, you take a plain book and add that. Look at the interest that that makes, right? All of a sudden it's like, what's that all about? And you can just cut out a whole bunch of frames and use those eyes and make a whole bunch. You could cover the back and make little ornaments. What a creepy little, on a Halloween tree, that would be really cool. You can make note cards. Like, there's just no limit to, you know, and this is very basic and plain, but you could put the mica on there. You could put jewels. You could make this about as fancy or plain as you wanted to. Okay, so one of the things about this project is, like a lot of kind of mass makes, I'm going to, my reflection there. A lot of things are in different stages. So this was one of the first ones we did, right? I put in the dimensional magic and glued in the bottom, and then I put it aside. The reason I did that is because this is just basic printer paper. It's very thin. And if I put too much glue underneath and then put glue on top, it's going to warp the paper and maybe it'll make the ink run. So now that it's dry, I can do the top side. So you want to do the bottom side, let it dry, and then do the top side. So this is what's going to happen when you don't have a glass cabochon. So in this particular one, right, we glued on the bottom and then put a little bit of glue on the top and pressed the glass in it, right? We didn't need much glue for either side and we pressed it. So that's why we could do it that way. But when you're working with something that doesn't have the glass, we have to now make faux glass up here, which means we're going to use not a ton of dimensional magic, but enough that if the bottom side was already wet, it might be enough to make this run. So what we want to do is, it's similar to resin. You want to just put a little bit on. I like to put it over the eyeball. And then this is where you're going to take the paintbrush and you're just going to try to smooth it and guide it evenly across the surface of the eye. And I don't know if you can tell, but see how you can see where their divot is there? That's not an even coating, right? It's hard to do on camera because I can't get up close to it. The best that I can explain it is when you're putting on nail polish and you want to have that nice smooth coat on top, right? You don't want to keep going over it with the brush. You just want to gently, with the most gentle touch, try to get around the entire picture and make it as smooth as possible. And like resin, you can get little tiny bubbles in there that will then dry as bubbles. Let's see if I have any bubbles. I don't see any bubbles in this particular, oh, look, see, you can see that little spot there is a divot. So it's just about being about as gentle to the surface as possible, trying to guide it. You can always go in with a little bit more after. But I do not see any bubbles, and I'm a little bit worried about, I guess I'll just add a teeny bit more dimensional magic here. I don't want to disrupt it too much. But that made a big difference in that little divot, and I'll just try to smooth that out. It's very forgiving. And when that dries, it's going to dry almost like a piece of glass. You can see how shiny it is right now. And when that dries, it will dry like a piece of glass. If there are any bubbles, you want to go in with a needle and pop the bubbles. And you can always go in and add another layer after. It's better than doing too thick of a layer at first. So now I'll put this aside. So let's show you how to make what started this all for me is these old pieces of jewelry that we all have in our jewelry box, in our grandmother's jewelry box, in our mother's jewelry box. You can get them at estate sales, flea markets, right? They're just gold tone with seed pearls or seed jewels around them, and there's an empty center. I think these were like scarf pins. So you're going to pick an eye, right? And it's easy. You'll have your sheet of eyes, and you're just going to place them on top and see what you like and don't like. Now, in this particular one, that's a great size. I don't like my eyes to be too big. I don't want them to fill the whole space. I want some skin around them. That's a very inquisitive eye, and I like that one a lot, but it isn't the one that I've chosen for this project. I wanted one that the eye was slightly smaller and that there were some other details. That one would work. This one would work. Look at this one. You have some dark space. I chose this one because she has fair skin and it's very creamy like the pearl. And I liked the hint of the curl of her hair and her eyebrow in it. So the trick to this is, like I said, you're going to hold the item over the paper and grab the details you want. I want to grab the eyebrow, a little bit of the curl in the eye, and I don't need the eye to be center, which would probably make some of you crazy, right? But I'm not a center or a matchy person, so that's just me. And then you're going to go in and you're going to trim it out. Just like that. Okay? This is not going to be rocket science here. Now this is the back, that's the front of the pin. Now you can see how am I going to fit this in. So then what I want to do is I want to hold it over where I want it. I want it to be, we'll go backwards. That'll make it easier for me to explain this. Do you like your pin down so that it can just clip in like that? Or do you like your pin up so that it's harder to fall out? I think it's supposed to go down based on where it's centered on here. So I'm going to say that it should be like this. So I'm going to hold my eye on it like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide the paper a little bit this direction. Take my little scissors and I'm going to make just a tiny little snip where the end of the pin is. It's hard to do on camera. Okay. Then I'm going to put it back where I go, and I'm going to turn it this way, make the paper go just a hair over, and make a snip where the pin is. Now, why did I do that? Well, because the paper has to go around the pin. So what's going to have to happen is I have to be able to fit this paper in around the pin. I found that snipping this, the smaller side first, is helpful. So here's that snip. Let's see. See it? I'm going to make a snip just a hair next to it. And then I'm going to fold that backwards. Just like that. Now I should be able to slide this piece over the pin. Like that. Okay. And now if I want to slip, I need to put a little slip, a little nip here. And then fold that. Now I should be able to place my paper and accommodate that pin and look on this side and see how I want to adjust it. I'm just getting the edge of the eyebrow and a little bit of the curl. And you can see a little bit of a hole. It's okay because I'm just going to push that more back into place like that. And you won't see that. But what I do see is that the paper needs to be trimmed slightly here and slightly there. So I'm going to get a pencil and just mark where I want to trim a little bit so I don't trim too much. Like Now, I can read your mind. You are saying that is an ugly back, Michelle. And you are absolutely correct. It is an ugly back. And we'll cover that when the time comes. So now that that is trimmed out, let's see if it fits. And it's very awkward to do this on camera, but not looking through a camera lens, it's not that hard. You just want to push the paper down, make sure that that little piece that you flipped up, is in as much as it will accommodate the pin. Moved in. And then you're going to look from the front and see how it looks. And it looks pretty good. I have the hint of the curl, maybe not as much as I originally wanted, but that's fine. And the only thing I think I need is to press this down just a little bit more. Let me show you if you can see on the camera. With my pin, I'm just going to stick that in a little bit more so there's no gaps. Okay, so maybe you would think that I would glue it from the back side, but I actually am not. For me to keep this in place exactly how I want it, it would be impossible to try to glue it from the back side and try to push into place. I get the paper exactly where I want it, and then I take my dimensional magic and I just do a little bit of a bead around the edge. And I can take a tool to spread it and make sure that it is in that crack nice and evenly. And again, you don't want to do too much. And if you feel like you have too much, then blot a little bit of it away, because you don't want that paper to bleed or get all buckly. And then we're going to put that there to set for just a few minutes. So through the magic of video time, this is now dry and we can finish the piece. So the question is, do we want it just to be plain as this one is right here? Or do we want to put a little jewel in the corner? Well, let's see how that would look. So I have these, who knows what project this was for originally. These are just little glass gems, but they're flat back, which is important. I wish I had different sizes. That would make it great, because then I could choose a tiny size. I like the idea of a pink jewel, but I only have one size. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of that. How about one of the little seed beads? I think I like this more because it matches the pearl here. Let's do that. So what I would need to do is first, because I don't want it to move, I'm just going to put a little tiny dot of, well, that was a little bit more than a tiny dot. And I'm going to move the seed bead over, but I don't like the little hole to stand up. I want it to be sideways. Like that. So I need to move some of that liquid around. See? Let's move it just a teeny bit down in the corner of the eye, like a tear. Oh, now I moved it sideways. This is the delicate work. But to me, this is fun. This is fun because it's creative and each one is different. Okay, that looks like a tear. So then I'll just take the tip of this and kind of spread out some of this liquid. So now I'm going to let that set for a minute. Put that aside. Let's revisit our eyeball that has the tear. I think it's set enough that now I can come in, put some I have to be very careful not to disturb the teardrop. And now I'm going to try to spread this around. And you don't want to make this too thick. It's better to do thin layers and go back than do a very thick layer and have bubbles or ruin the paper underneath. So I'm going to finish smoothing out the Dimensional Magic, and then I'll put this aside to dry. So the next piece I want to do is kind of a fun piece. And what I want to do is mimic a style I saw in many pieces, which had like clouds all around the face, except I'm going to use mica. So, of course, we do the same thing we did before, which is put down a little bit of the adhesive, the Dimensional Magic, and then I'm just going to spread it out thin. And it doesn't have to coat the whole thing. We're just keeping it in place. And then I'm going to start building it up with mica. My gold leaf, my mica, and my granite chips. I'm going to take a little bit of the Dimensional Magic and I'm going to go around the corner. I'll put a bead around the whole entire project. And that's going to be where I start the mica into. And I might do a little bit past just for the gluing purposes. So the process essentially is pretty simple. I just make a little stack of micas, put it to the side, and I sprinkle some into the glue and start pushing it around with the base of my paintbrush. And I will just push it around until I have that first layer of mica set. Then I'm going to add just a teeny bit of glue on top of the edge of that second layer. And I'm going to keep just layering on gold leaf and mica and a little bit of the granite chips until I have a nice soft effect that mimicked the mass-produced lover's eyes. When they hit America in the early 1900s, like the 1910s, it was a very short-lived fad where a lot of eyes were painted ahead of time and then placed into jewelry. And they often made clouds and other soft effects where the eye would peek out. And that's what I'm really trying to mimic here. And I think it's pretty effective and really fun to do. I really like how it looks. What do you think? Now it's time to put down a little bit of the Dimensional Magic just to hold it. But again, I don't want this to be so wet that it ends up puckering or making the ink run. So I have to be careful about that as I'm creating this. I'm going to let this dry now. And then I'm going to put the cover sheen on top of it, the cover layer. And now about a half an hour later, we can finish. Now here I want to start laying the bottom resin on. So what I want to do is make sure that there are no pieces of mica anywhere in the center, because that's not what I want from this. I want the eye to be completely peeking through. And I can, all right, so I'm going to go very, very light on this and start at the eye. And I'm not squirting any more out. I'm just moving it around with the nozzle. That's all I'm doing. And I'm not going over the mica yet, because what I'm trying to do is protect the eye from having that happen, where the mica intrudes on the eye. Push that over there. And I gently just fill the center area with Dimensional Magic. So this I will let dry, this layer, and then I'll put the last layer on. And we can continue on. We can continue with this little guy here. And let me show you how I did this. This was a prepackaged charm, not unlike this. Let me go back. It had a letter in it, an initial in it. And I didn't want that, so I just picked it out with my picky tool. In this pin, I want to hang some charms, but this has to still go through the cloth. So I need to pick this out, and I need to make sure the eye is this direction. The first one of these I did backwards, and that's not too much of an issue, except for the fact that then when I wanted to put gems on it, I couldn't. I can't have gems hanging from this and still get this through a fabric, through a scarf or a textile on a journal. So I essentially did it upside down. I should have had it like this. So I'm going to do it correctly here. And I'm going to do it in the same way that I did this one, which is just go underneath and get the edge with a picky tool and then pry it off. You know, these are cheap things that were like at the Michaels or AC Moore when that was in business that I bought. But I'm not a big fan of the yellow. But I am a big fan of making it a piece of eye jewelry. And there, see that? It's just a bezel now. Just a plain bezel. So now I need to find an eye for that. And then I'll go through the same process I did before of auditioning eyes for the piece. And then once I've chosen the eye that I think I like the best, I will go in with my tiny little scissors and I will trim it from the back side first. And then I'll take my little scissors and just try to smooth out the edges. And then I will place it inside the bezel just to check it. I'll add some dimensional magic and it'll be ready to dry. All right, let's revisit this one. Now I had it close to my work area, which was not smart because look what happened. I got a little tiny fleck of paper in the resin. Learn from me, people. Learn from me. I am not the one who should be giving tips, I guess, about things if I'm not going to be careful. I think it's because I am trying to do too many at once. Okay, so now that it's set enough, I'm going to put a small layer of dimensional magic over all of that mica that I set. And again, I have to be so careful because I don't want to ruin this paper, right? And I have to incorporate it into the layer that I just had. So this is where a brush comes in handy, just to kind of move it down, move it over the mica, incorporate it into the piece. And it's hard on camera to see this, but when you're in person, you can see how smooth it is. And if there's bubbles, you can see that quite easily in person. I can see that there's a bubble here, which I need to take care of, and one here. Sometimes you can even go against gravity and let it fill in. It looks pretty good, so now I'm going to go let it dry. And now the last step of the day is just to finish off the eye pin. As you know, when you mass make, you have to go back and forth with stages of things because there's always drying time. And I'm going to do it exactly the way I started this video, which is the 3-in-1 glue around the edge, then sprinkling the little bead mica on top of it, and then taking a wooden stick and just making sure that that edge is nice and clean. And I will finish it off by putting Dimensional Magic in the center once that's dry, which I'm not going to show you here because you've already seen it and you're already done with this. And we're just going to finish smoothing this out, and then we're going to head on over to the table and we're going to look at all the great little eye projects that we created today. It is time for me to end this session. So let's go over what we made today in the short amount of time. We made a basic book plate out of paper. We did a basic bezel, not a bezel actually, yeah, just a bezel with no covering. And you can see how shiny it is just by doing that thin layer above. We have done a cabochon bezel. We have done a faux pocket watch, and all I did was add a little bit of silver gilding wax and some of that patina paint around the edge just to make this less brass-like. I think that came out nice and it'll look great on the front of a book. We have done this traditional lover's eye with a teardrop in the corner. We have done this lover's eye pin, which we will embellish here with some hanging charms. And my absolute favorite of the day is this faux mourning locket with the piece of lace in the back. Now look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them that we did, all very different, all for different uses, different stories. I can see this one on the hanging off the back of a spine of a book. Would look really simple, but so intriguing. This, I think, is a great inspiration for a journal and a great storytelling piece for a journal. This just adds any interest to the front of a journal or a signature page. This right here, I would put on the front of a book for sure. Maybe just a subject of lovers or mystery or whatever it is you want. This I would put probably with other charms on a dangle in the back of a spine, or wear it, which is kind of cool. And this one here, depending on what I do with the charms, would be whether I'd keep it to wear it or whether I would wrap a journal in textile and then pin this in it. So many different ways to use this idea, and I absolutely love it. In the next video, we'll be exploring how to make lover's eyes out of book plates, faux pocket watches that have glass in the front and can open and shut. And we'll even be working with old watches that you may have laying around that no longer work. We'll make really cool lover's eyes. There's so many things that we can do with things that we have around our craft room. I hope you loved being here today. I loved having you, and I hope that you'll join me for the next episode. Please like this video if you found it interesting and informative. I'd love for you to subscribe. And until I see you in the next video, bye.